Hi, welcome to Questions of Faith. My name is Eli. Today we have a question from Angela from California. She asks, Dear Eli, I have been married for 15 years and my husband and I have been going through a few years of arguments and disagreements. I'm considering getting a divorce. What does the Bible say? And is it permitted? Divorce and remarriage are complex topics that have caused significant debate over time. However, the Bible provides us with a clear perspective on the importance of marriage and the sanctity of the vows we take. The scriptures guide us towards understanding that marriage is a sacred union that God intended to be lifelong. Divorce, while permitted in certain circumstances, is not God's ideal plan for his people. In Matthew chapter 19 verse 6, Jesus says, So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. This powerful statement emphasizes that marriage is a divine covenant, designed by God to be a permanent bond. Jesus stresses that once two people are married, they become one flesh, and this unity should not be broken by human intervention. Divorce is permitted in the Bible under specific circumstances, primarily in cases of adultery, Matthew chapter 5 verse 32. Jesus recognized that sin enters the world, and sometimes relationships are severely damaged. However, even in these situations, God's heart is not for separation but for reconciliation. He desires forgiveness, healing, and restoration within marriage, rather than the dissolution of the bond. In Malachi chapter 2 verse 16, God says, I hate divorce, and this verse reveals God's heart for the sanctity of marriage. It's not that God condemns individuals who experience divorce, but he clearly communicates that divorce goes against his plan for marriage. It brings heartache, brokenness, and pain to all involved, especially children, who often suffer the most in these situations. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, 10-11, Paul offers guidance on this issue. To the married I give this command, not I, but the Lord, a wife must not separate from her husband. But if she does, she must remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband. And a husband must not divorce his wife. Paul emphasizes that reconciliation is the preferred path. He does not offer remarriage as an option if divorce occurs, highlighting the importance of preserving the original marriage bond and working through the difficulties rather than walking away from the relationship. God understands that marriage can be difficult, and challenges will arise. However, he calls us to have patience, forgiveness, and a commitment to one another that reflects his love for the church. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 25 tells husbands to love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Christ's sacrificial love for the church serves as the ultimate model for marital love. His commitment was not contingent on circumstances but was a selfless, unconditional love that endured through hardship and suffering. Reconciliation in marriage is not always easy, but it is possible through the power of prayer, humility, and the Holy Spirit. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 tells us, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. This verse reminds us that with God, there is hope for restoration. Even when we feel like giving up, God provides the strength to heal, forgive, and rebuild. In a world where divorce rates are high and remarriage is often viewed as a solution, we must look to the Bible for wisdom. Remarriage after divorce is not the answer to marital struggles. Instead, it is a call for us to seek reconciliation, forgiveness, and restoration. God's plan for marriage is beautiful and purposeful, and he desires that we honor the vows we made before him. Ultimately, the call to stay in marriage and work through difficulties is not a call to remain in abusive or harmful situations. The Bible also speaks to the protection of individuals in extreme circumstances, but it emphasizes that God's heart is always for healing, restoration, and reconciliation. God can bring peace and reconciliation into even the most broken relationships, and he calls us to trust in his guidance, seek help when needed, and never give up on the covenant we made before him. In conclusion, we are called to uphold the sanctity of marriage as a reflection of God's covenant with us. While divorce may seem like a way out in difficult times, it is not God's ideal plan for our lives. Rather than pursuing remarriage, we should focus on healing and reconciliation in our marriages, trusting that God is faithful to help us through the hardest of times. Let us honor our vows and seek God's strength to preserve the unity that he has created in marriage. Thank you for joining us today on Questions of Faith. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more discussions.